system, how caste system is a crystallized form of Varna system, and then how caste system is giving way to class system. And we had discussed this. Also, I had shown you this idea wherein you can find that the class system, or rather class of a person or a social group, overlaps with caste. Also, this is slightly older data. This one is from 2005-6. Here you have a more recent from NHFS 5. And here also you'll find, yes, the things have changed a little. Yes, there is progress, there is development with respect to changing class of people from the weaker sections, but it is not considerable. So why have I added this here? Because you found this in your current affairs, and this can actually be used as a reference to say whether the caste system overlaps with class system or not. Do we have to remember any of this data? Absolutely no. The only thing is, whenever you find these kind of observations in your newspaper, in your current affairs, you can just use them to as examples, as means to substantiate your answers. The idea of social mobility says that we were saying people are, say someone is here in terms of class system, say they are poor. Now they go for education, they get a good job, and with this job, say from being poor, they convert to, say, middle class. What is this? Social mobility. That means an individual from a particular social group has moved to another social group in the hierarchy. That is what the idea of social mobility is. Okay, so now we have to look into various factors that are responsible for the continuity of caste system, and then we'll also look into the factors that are responsible for change. So if we talk about continuity, we say that our system of reservation, wherein one is identified or a social group is identified on the basis of caste, is a factor responsible for continuity. Similarly, the caste councils that we had mentioned, we were saying that these caste councils are the ones who will enforce the norms, the rules of the caste system. They are the ones who will decide whether an act committed by a person in that particular caste group is wrong or not. And they will decide the punishment as well. So these caste councils, in the name of Khap Panchayats, particularly in your western Uttar Pradesh, regions of Haryana, a few regions of Rajasthan, they're still prevalent there. And they are the ones who, to a great extent, enforce this caste system. And that is why we say that, yes, caste is still dominant in your rural areas. Because in urban areas, you do not have any such institution. In urban areas, it is more secular. In urban areas, it is on the basis of your occupation, on the basis of the work that you take up. Then you'll find that with respect to reservation, there are various social groups who will take up their cause time and again. So, for instance, the Rajputs will come up and say that we also want reservation. The Brahmins will come up and say that we do not want others to get reservation, for instance. So these various pressure groups, these various socio-political groups that work in this direction also enforce norms of the caste system. They are also one of the reasons that caste system has been maintaining its continuity. Then you think of your caste-based politics. Can you suggest a caste-based political party? Can you suggest a caste-based political party? Yes, so you are talking about Bahujan Samaj Party. You're talking about various parties like Samajwadi Party, which are not originally caste-based, but they enforce these caste norms. So these parties, for that matter, also lead to a continuity in caste system, because they would not let people get out of their hold, get out of their grip. They would want to use people as vote bank. They would want to mobilize these people and ultimately vote for them. They'll say that we are here to take care of whatever issues you have. We are here for our caste. We are here for a community. And we are the ones who will make sure that your rights are not infringed upon. So these various caste-based political parties and the caste politics in general also becomes responsible for maintaining this continuity. Then you think of casteism. Casteism is a simple idea wherein you favor someone on the basis of their caste. You go to an interview, you are eligible, you are qualified, go to the interview goes well. But at the end, the interviewer asks you, which caste are you from? And you say that I am from X caste. Even though you were eligible, even though you were qualified, even though you were better than other candidates, but on the basis of your caste, say he or she denies your candidature. They say, no, you are not a good fit for this job and would rather give it to someone else who might be less qualified than you, but belong to the same caste as the interviewer. What is that? Favoring someone on the basis of their caste. And this casteism that prevails in our society is one of the major reasons, because on the basis of this attachment towards one's caste, say thinking that on the basis of our caste all our interests are going to be similar, having this feeling on the basis of which you favor someone or you go against someone is one of the major reasons that you find all the issues related to caste are prevailing, because people would still believe in the purity of one caste. People would still believe in the solidarity amongst the people of that social group, of that caste, because of which our caste system has maintained its continuity. But then there are factors which are responsible for change as well. Can someone suggest what can be the various factors which are bringing about change in the caste system? Can someone suggest what are the various factors which can bring about change in caste system? So yes, you're suggesting education. What else? Yes, think about modernization. Your constitutional provisions. Rationalization. How about urbanization? Can we say that urbanization is also leading to this dilution of the caste system? Yes, so Ankita has suggested Sanskritization. Good. Globalization, etc. So there can be various factors. Let's look at them one by one. Let's look at them one by one. So one major factor can be education. Once you educate someone, once they start believing in rationality, once they say stay away from various superstitions, once they start thinking rationally in a scientific manner, you can make them believe that everyone is equal. You can make them believe that you cannot discriminate against someone on the basis of their caste identity. And ultimately, education can become a factor which is responsible for this change. And also the modern education that we have, think of not just education, but think of the education system as well. The traditional education system had uh, discriminated against people from certain castes. They were not allowed to go for education. But if you look at the education system now, people from various castes are sitting there, not even aware of others' caste identity. They're sitting there, studying together, participating in everything together. Think about all of you. You might not be aware of someone else's caste, religion, etc. But here are you studying together without any discrimination whatsoever. Then you can think of modernization, urbanization. So think of urbanization first. Now, with urbanization, what is happening? People are moving from rural areas to urban areas. So urbanization is basically migration from rural areas to urban areas and growth of population in urban areas. So once a person migrates from rural area to urban area, we're looking for better opportunities to work, looking for better opportunity for education of their children, looking for better healthcare opportunities, looking for a better standard of living. In this process, you find that once you move from rural area to urban area, in urban areas, no one knows which caste you belong to. In urban areas, there is a caste and class mixing experience that you go through every day. You travel by a metro, you travel by a bus, and you say that you have a lot of people around you, and you would not know and you would not care what caste or what religion other person is coming from. So this urbanization can also lead or help someone to get rid of their caste identity. And you would find that one of the reasons for migration can also be caste based violence in a particular community. So if there is a community which has a lot of caste based violence, people would tend to move away from there, looking for better place to stay, looking to get rid of that violence. Also, if we think of industrialization, industrialization is setting up of industries. Now, if an industry is set up somewhere, maybe around your rural areas or your urban areas, people would move. They leave behind their caste identity in the village and move on to work with other fellow members in the industry, wherein they would not know what caste one is from, what culture one is coming from. And it takes a lot of time for you to know. But also think of an exception. Think of people forming unions. Think of people forming groups on the basis of their caste, even in urban areas, even in industries. So find a lot of your labor unions are also based in caste. Similarly, if you look at, say, your resident welfare association, the members generally vote for their own caste, person from their own caste. They generally tend to hang out together. So yes, there have been changes, but ultimately we find that this idea of casteism is there, imbibed in us, which we are not able to get rid of. And this is the kind of socialization that sociology tries to push away from you, so that you can become more neutral, so that you are less and less biased. Similarly, you find that the other forces like globalization are also leading to modernization. Then with modern lifestyle, with increasing role of technology, with decreasing impact of religion, you find that your caste identity would not matter so much. But ultimately you find that yes, you might live in urban areas where your caste identity does not matter. But think about a family function, a family program, for which you have to go back to your village. Or think of a person coming from your village to the city, looking for a job. Don't you think that would again strengthen the caste identity? And people would want to go visit their parents. They would want to go back to their homes. And ultimately, that experience that you'll have of that culture will strengthen your caste identity again. So we cannot say in absolute terms that these things have brought about far-reaching changes in the caste system. But yes, they are factors responsible for change. Change is happening. And remember from our yesterday's conversation that it is always a process. It is not that we have achieved, say, complete neutrality with respect to caste. Even if we ask ourselves, you might find that you are still biased on the basis of your caste. Whenever there are, say, think of communal rights. Whenever there are communal rights, people inadvertently tend to take side with their own social group, with their own community, with their own religion. And that is the level of bias that we have inherent in ourselves. Without looking at the facts, without looking at the incident that happened, we will start taking sides, which is problematic. Then you think about democratic decentralization. Understand it simply as uh, reach of your Panchayati Raj institutions, people getting right to vote. Then with the spread of your Panchayati Raj institutions, you find that people, more and more people have started voting down to the village level. Now, with this democratic decentralization, there are two things that have happened. One is that it has diluted the caste identity with your equal right to vote for everyone, equal right to representation, that irrespective of your caste, you can fight elections. Irrespective of your caste, you can go and vote your leaders, your representatives. So, to this extent, it has diluted the caste system. But you think of your caste based politics, and particularly on the local level, particularly in your panchayat elections, particularly in your urban body elections, you'll find that it is generally on the basis of caste that people vote in rural areas. You take example of rural Bihar, you take example of rural Uttar Pradesh, you take example of rural Karnataka. And it is not just limited to rural areas, but yes, it is more dominant there, that it is caste on the basis of which people go and vote their representatives. Uh, so yes, if when the seat is reserved for your SC/STs or women, then they cannot contest. People from other castes cannot contest. But in general, everyone has a right to represent themselves. Everyone has a right to vote. Then you think about Sanskritization. We have already understood mobility, social mobility, moving from one social group to another in the caste hierarchy. And when we say social mobility, it is not just limited to caste, it can be class, it can be any kind of hierarchy that can be there. Now, think of Sanskritization as a form of social mobility, wherein people from the so called lower castes, they imitate the people from the so called upper caste, and with that, they raise their status. With that, they rise up in the hierarchy. One form of imitation can be wearing the sacred thread. Now, wearing of the sacred thread or the sacred thread ceremony has been limited to, traditionally has been limited to the Brahmins and Kshatriyas. That they were the ones who would go for the ceremony, who will wear the sacred thread. But with time, you see that the so-called lower castes also have aspirations, that they also want to rise up the hierarchy. And if we say that this hierarchy is based in rituals, as we have already mentioned, that this hierarchy is based in rituals. So, what would be better than to imitate that ritual and rise up the hierarchy? And this process of social mobility can be understood as Sanskritization. So, I hope you got the idea that moving from a lower, so called lower caste to a so called upper caste, following, imitating the rituals. This is what Sanskritization is. And with this, you see, previously we were saying that there is no mobility in a caste system, but that is our traditional caste system. With time, you find that there has been mobility in a caste system with Sanskritization, with people having enough or earning more money, having more wealth, and hence more prestige, and a raised or elevated social status in the society. The example of Green Revolution can be taken up in that context. The example of political empowerment of various communities can be taken up. So yes, now we find that there is mobility as well. Now, we looked at various factors responsible for change in caste system. We looked at various factors responsible for continuity. Also, what we did was, we looked at the caste system in the light of change. To do that, what we did was, we took up various features of the caste system and tried to find out whether something has changed or remained the same, right? But if you remember, in those features, we saw that yes, there have been changes, but a few things have remained. For instance, yes, now there is no restriction as such on intercaste marriage, because with your uh, right to choose your partner, right to marry someone, a person of your choice, you can marry anyone. There is no restriction on intercaste marriage, on interreligious marriage. But we find that we are still limited to the scope of marriages is still limited to intra-caste marriages or endogamy, that we people do not tend to marry outside their caste. There can be various reasons for that. One can be the idea of pollution, right? So the idea being that if you marry someone from other caste, and out of that marriage a child is born, that child will be considered impure. You would have heard, if you are from, say, North India, you would have heard terms like Gola. That means someone born out of an intercaste marriage, that they are not pure, they are impure, and again accorded a lower status. Similarly, there can be various social taboos, there can be various restrictions within your family, and also it can be simply for the sake of maintaining your family status, that you would not want to marry someone outside the caste, because what will society say? Society will say that they went for an intercaste marriage and hence they have a lower status now. But the fact is, the reality is, we are still restricted to endogamy when it comes to our caste. Now let's look at this question. This question says that our caste system is undergoing changes in the contemporary Indian society. A fairly easy question meant for your practice, because this is the first question that you are going to write from this subject. So it has to be simple, so that there is a gradual increase in level. So the caste system is undergoing changes in the contemporary Indian society. Discuss. Now, if you look at this question, we have to think about the changes that are happening to the caste system. What do we know about it? We know that there are factors which are leading to these changes. Then we know that there are few features of the caste system where you find change, and we also know that there are various features and factors which are responsible for continuity. Now let's think about a logical structure for this question. Yes, now you understand that the statement says, the tail ender says discuss. So you have to write more in favor of the argument. So yes, you would have to say that caste system is undergoing changes. So let's divide it into introduction, body, and your conclusion. Right. Now in the body, you know that what we have to write is that the caste system is undergoing changes. And how do you do that? You take up various features of the caste system, and you start analyzing them one by one. This is your body. Fairly simple. We have just done that exercise. You try to write it, because you'll find when you are trying to write this, you might run out of words. you might not get the perfect language. And the only way to fix it is try writing. If you write, you'll understand where is it that I'm failing, where is the gap, and how can I fill it. Coming back to the question, so body can be simply understood where you have to mention the changes that the caste system is undergoing, highlight the features, and give examples. Give examples of endogamy, give examples of, for instance, restrictive occupation. Let's say that now occupation is not restricted. You can take up any occupation you want. A girl coming from a family of barbers can take up anything, any occupation that she wants. She can become a civil servant, she can become a politician, etc. So you give those examples and substantiate this. Now we are left with introduction and conclusion. And we also know that we have other perspectives as well. So one is, how about mentioning the factors in a very brief manner in the introduction? Mentioning the factors responsible for change briefly in the introduction. How about this? So what we can do is, we mention various factors responsible for change in the caste system briefly in the introduction. Then we move on to the body, wherein we say that the caste system is undergoing changes, and we show that using various features of the caste system. Let's come to conclusion. These two ideas are done. Now you have various factors and features responsible for continuity as well. What can be done? We can mention these factors and a few features briefly and show that caste system has maintained continuity as well. Yes, there are changes going on in the caste system, but it has maintained continuity as well. Can you suggest an alternative structure? Okay, so Mithun has suggested the caste system in contemporary Indian society has changed over a period of time with the help of education. Yes, absolutely. So you can mention various factors responsible for change, but again, very briefly, because the subject matter, the crux of the question is this body. You try writing it in 250 words. So please suggest. Can you suggest any other introduction apart from this? Can you suggest any other introduction apart from factors responsible for change? Yes, so Santosh has highlighted something. So what we can do is, we can show the transition in caste system over the years. So rather than starting from Varna system, start from the caste system itself and show a transition towards the class-based hierarchy. Yes, so evolution of caste system can be one way. And now remember, here you have to primarily discuss caste to class transition. Do not start from Varna, because again, we will digress from the answer, from the crux. So let's stay away from Varna system. Let's stay away from definition of the caste system, because that has not been asked in the question. Yes, so the process of caste system, the factor has also already been mentioned. That is our part one. That is our way to introduce one. Just think about this. How about we talk about the continuity and change within these factors? So we are saying that the caste system has various features like endogamy, restrictive occupation, etc. How about we mention briefly the exceptions there? How about we mention briefly that in one feature you'll find continuity and you'll find change as well? How about that? But we have to do it briefly. Yes, it is good to go for suggestions in the conclusion, but look at this question. Do you think we can come up with any kind of suggestions? This question doesn't need any kind of suggestions. No, we cannot write the difference between caste and class. What we have to show is, what we have to portray is that the caste system is transitioning into class system. Yes, so Abhishek, one idea is that we have to write about factors responsible for change, and the factors which are responsible for change can directly come from your government interventions. For example, abolition of untouchability, right? So it can come directly from there. Okay, so what have we discussed? We have to show that caste system is undergoing changes in the contemporary Indian society, and we have to discuss it. That means our body will entail the factors which are responsible for change in caste system. So what you have to do here is, you have to take up features of the caste system and analyze them one by one, looking into the looking in the light of change, that this is how change has happened. Then the conclusion can be simple, that you write various factors which are responsible for continuity in the caste system, and you also briefly mention various features of the caste system which have not changed. Features like membership by birth, which has not changed. So you mention those in conclusion. With respect to introduction, we said that we can either write various factors which are responsible for change briefly, then maybe we can talk about the transition of caste system into class system. So yes, these can be 2-3 ways of writing this answer. But how do you know what fits perfectly? The only way to figure out is, try writing this question. Let's write this question, write this answer, send it across to IAS Live, get it evaluated, and you'll realize that yes, how do we structure our answers? Because generally we find that everyone tends to write the definition, tends to look for some kind of facts if they are available. But again, it is not always necessary to start with facts, because at times you would not have any facts with respect to a particular topic. So yes, your answers should be a mix of everything. There can be questions where you have, say, something related to population. You'll have the perfect stats with you. You can definitely start with facts. Then there can be a question on a particular government scheme. Then again, you can start with facts. You can talk about the provisions. But looking at a question like this, and it is not that a question like this would not be asked, because I'll show you similar kinds of questions that have been asked from other topics. So if you look at this question, you do not have a way of writing facts, of mentioning facts. Writing the definition is also not required. What we can do is, we can just break this question into parts, in dimensions, and try to fit in those according to the demand. So I hope this idea about how to structure this question is clear. About conclusion, see, the question is saying the caste system is undergoing change, but we also know that the caste system has maintained its continuity. So in conclusion, you can briefly mention about various factors which are responsible for maintaining this continuity, and also highlight a few features of the caste system, like membership by birth, like segmental division, in which you can say that caste system has maintained its continuity. Okay, so Bharti, it's better to stay away from making judgments about right or wrong, right? So it's better to stay away from that, because yes, there'll be questions where they would ask you to take a side, and you can take positive and negative side on the basis of demand of the question. But when the question is neutral, let's stay neutral. When a question is neutral, let's not add say, the flavor of morality to it, right? So let's stay away from good and bad, because it's very neutral, and we already have a lot of content to fit in. So okay, see, the thing is, you just try answering this question, try writing an answer, and you will be able to figure out what is the problem, where is it that you are lagging, because we have discussed the entire structure. What can be the structure? The only thing that you would have to do now is just put your words in the answer, just write the language. Now, the first salient feature of Indian society was caste. Now, another salient feature is family and the institution of marriage. Let's start with family first. But before that, look at a question that has been asked in the past. The life cycle of a joint family. What is a joint family? Type of a family. Depends on economic factors rather than social values discussed. Now, you might not be able to understand the complete question. The only idea is that they can ask about type of family. Now, this type of family is based on size. They can also, this is say traditional system of family that will come to, do not worry. Then they can also ask you questions about new or upcoming forms of family, the newer families that we see. And yesterday you had suggested with examples what kind of new families are there that we see. And again, you would find that a basic structure has to be followed. If you talk about new family, if they say ask you to analyze single parent families, are we going to take up single parent families in the discussion? No, it is not even required. What we have to do is we have to understand that what are the basic features of family as an institution, on the basis of which we can analyze it. And we'll come to that. Do not worry about it. Let's try to define family. Also, remember everything as a process. Even your definitions are a process. The definition of poverty has evolved over the years. The definitions, whichever definitions you talk about, have been evolving and will evolve in the future. So we do not have to fix or limit ourselves to this definition, because we'll find there is a lot beyond the scope of this definition. What we can do is we can try to encompass more and more within this definition, which will happen with time. So let's look how can we define family. A family is a socially defined set of relationships between at least two persons who are related either by birth, marriage, or adoption. Think of a traditional Indian family. Think of, if not traditional, think of your family. You have your father, your mother. The relationship between them is that of marriage. This is your father, this is your mother. They are related by marriage. Now, this marriage, was it socially defined? Because they must have had a wedding ceremony. They must have invited a lot of people. So, socially defined. It need not necessarily be legal, but socially defined. Then your father and mother gave birth through you. How are you related to your father and mother? By birth. Then there can be a possibility that they adopt someone. Now, all these relationships, all these individuals constitute family. So, if you try to understand it, family is a socially defined. Socially defined. Why? Because the marriage, when a marriage is happening, it is legitimized by inviting people. It has to be legitimized by society, so that the relationship is legitimate. Because generally you find that if there is a child born out of say of a relationship which is not socially defined, they are considered illegitimate. Why? Because the society, for that matter, does not accept that relationship, and marriage ceremonies or wedding ceremonies are basically a means to that. So, socially defined set of relationships between at least two persons. So, family will have at least two persons who are related either by birth, as in case of you and your parents, They can be related by marriage or adoption. Now, this is what a very old static definition of marriage, of family. Now, you think about this. Think about a live-in relationship. A few of you might be in a live-in relationship, for that matter, or might be aware of a live-in relationship. Now, the people who are there in this live-in relationship, how are they related? Are they related by birth? No. Are they married? Again, no. Has one partner adopted the other partner? Again, no. So find that this definition is changing. Again, think about a single person family. Think about someone, maybe in your neighborhood, during COVID, who might have lost their parents. And they can be the only ones who remain in this family. They can be the only ones who remain in this family. Would it be would you consider it a family? Absolutely yes. They might not have any relationship whatsoever, but they can form a single person family. So this criteria of at least 2% is also challenged, and that is why we were saying that it is a process, and this idea of family is evolving. The idea of marriage is also changing. Everything is under process. But do you need to remember the definition at all? Absolutely no. There's no need to say remember the definition. All you have to know is various features of family and also various functions of family. Let's do one thing. Let's try to list various features of family according to what we know about it. Are there people living under the same roof? Cohabitat means people sharing a same residence, living under the same roof. Would that be a family? Absolutely yes. Is it a feature of family? Yes. Then yes, Sahil will come to that part. Then the kind of relationships that they can have amongst each other can be blood ties, can be because of marriage. Then yes, they will emotionally support each other. But think about this. There might be a few of you who are dependent on their parents. So they will definitely economically also support each other. Then with respect to decision making, you are saying, say, mutual decision making. Let's keep it mutual for now. Mutual decision making. And we'll challenge everything. Do you share a kitchen and do you share the resources? Yes, you do. Dining at one place? Yes. Support each other financially, psychologically? Great. Great. Now let's look at these features one by one. And we will look at everything in the light of change. We'll look at various types of family, functions of family, how the functions are changing one by one. But let's look at these basic features. And you can say that yes, on basis of these basic features, we can say that someone constitutes a family. So sharing or living under the same roof can be one feature. But now you think of yourself. You might be living in the city, or you might be living in a different city. Your parents might be living in a different city. But if you have to take any decision, if you have to do anything, generally you consult your parents. If someone asks you, where do you belong from? It is the family in whose name you'll say that I belong to that family. So they people might not live together under the same roof, but they can also constitute a family. Think of a husband and wife living in different cities for the sake of their work, but they still constitute a family. So yes, it is a basic feature, but need not necessarily be the case. Then a family on the basis of blood ties, marriage, etc. So marriage we have already challenged. That we are saying there can be people living in a live-in relationship. And if you know your domestic, with respect to your domestic violence, live-in relationships are also considered at par with marriages. Then another thing is that you say that procreation or giving birth to children is one of the important functions of family, that they give birth to these children, legitimized children. They give birth to legitimate children. That is another function. But think of same-sex couples. There can be two partners living together, might not be married, living together, and they are homosexuals, and they would not go for giving birth. They would not go for procreation. One, biologically not possible, and otherwise as well, say they do not go for any kind of other process as well. They would not go for, say, surrogacy. They would not go for adoption. So giving birth or raising, so it is basically bearing and rearing children. They're not involved in any. Then living in the same house, a few of you might be staying with your parents, and it is not necessary that everyone dines together. Does everyone dine together in your family? Not necessarily. You might have your food at a different time after you're done watching your movies or Netflix, whatever, and your parents might be having it at a regular fixed time, 7 p.m., 8 p.m., whatever time it is. So dining together is again not a necessary condition for someone to stay as a family. Then there's decision making. Again, the idea is traditionally the decision making used to happen according to the eldest male members of the family. But now we see there is more egalitarianism with respect to family. People consult each other within the family. The husband consults the wife, and the wife consults the husband, and they do consult the children as well. Also, think about the economic function of the family. That family is supposed to provide economic security to all the members. So you are considered one unit when it comes to finances. That whatever your parents earn, you also get an equal share of that. You get your needs fulfilled out of that income. So basically, you are considered as one unit of consumption. Similarly, if you think of agricultural times, you would say that a family was a unit of production as well. That the family together will work in the fields, will work in agriculture and produce something. So a unit of production. So basically, you are considered as one economic unit. But now you'll find that in urban areas, the husband and the wife both are earning, and they do not share the resources. They do not say create a pool out of the income that they get. The wife goes on spending her money according to her will, and the husband goes on spending the money according to his own will. So they might not even share economic resources. Then again, you need not necessarily have blood or ties of blood or marriage. Then cohabitation is also not an essential feature. So what we are saying is that yes, there are few basic features of families. That is the general trend, but every feature will find exceptions. You have to remember everything. You do not have to, but all you have to understand is the process. All you have to understand is how to look at something with a critical eye. So when someone says a family has to be heterosexual or the bond of marriage has to be heterosexual, you can dispute that. Yes, right now, same-sex marriage has not been legalized. It is in the process. Let's see what comes out of it. But again, yes, there can be two homosexual partners who share an accommodation, who live together, who might or might not share their economic resources. So the idea of family has been changing. The idea of family is undergoing a change. So the static idea of what family is, the definition of family is not important for us. What is important for us is the idea of change, how it is changing. So I hope you get this idea clear and you do not go behind remembering the definition, because the definition can be disputed simply. Now, one idea of family, looking at family, is looking at various basic features of family, like cohabitation, like dining together, like having blood or ties related to marriage and adoption. Then another idea of looking at family is through functions. Generally, in sociology, you need not remember about the thinker or anything, but it is considered that social institutions have certain functions that they fulfill. So any social institution, for that matter, will fulfill certain functions. When we talk about marriage, you have highlighted a few out of these. You have already highlighted the psychological function of providing love, support, care to each other. Family members stay together, have emotional attachment to each other, take care of each other's psychological needs. Then also, we have already discussed with socialization that one of the primary role of family is to socialize the children, teach them how to speak, teach them the norms of their religion, teach them the basic social etiquettes. What is that? Socialization of children, which is another important function. Then think of the economic function, that the family provides economic security to all the members. Now, traditionally, you find that in Indian families, it was generally the male members who used to work for the economic security, and others were uh, generally consumers, or others were generally the ones who were protected. But now you see that everyone contributes to the economic security of the family, be it the male members, be it the female members. Similarly, family has a biological function of first sexual gratification, because the idea is that sexual urges are biological, are natural, they have to be taken care of. But to satisfy your sexual urges, to have this sexual gratification, you have to form a relationship of marriage, which is socially defined. So the society has to accept your relationship of marriage, and then only you can go for sexual gratification or fulfill your sexual urges, sexual desires. But now that idea is changing as well. You can stay in a live-in relationship, for instance, where you are not married. Again, your relationship has not been socially legitimized. People might be aware that yes, there are two people living together, but they are not married. So they have basically not legitimized it. They are just aware that someone is staying there. Another biological function is procreation, or giving birth to children. So it starts with biological function. The first function is fulfill your sexual desires. Other idea is give birth to children. And again, if someone is talking about this, you'll find that it is your childbirth, it is the function of procreation or childbirth, which has become the basis for the arguments against homosexuality. That if there are two homosexuals, if there are two people from the same sex getting married together, how would they fulfill this biological function? Before this, the idea of sexual gratification was under question, which was done away with once they decriminalized homosexuality, because it was considered against the order of nature. It was considered against the order of nature if there are two people from the same sex getting into any kind of sexual activity. It was decriminalized, and it was considered that there's nothing uh, as order of nature. It is ultimately up to the individual what they want to do in their private lives. So first idea is biological function, then you have economic function of production, distribution, consumption. Production relates mostly to your agrarian families, wherein they produce together through that agricultural land that they have, and they distribute it equitably amongst the family members, and they consume it. But now if you look at modern society, it is more of consumption, because you might not be involved in any kind of production for that matter. You might be going for work in service sector, in industrial sector, earning an income from there, distributing that income and using it for consumption. Then socialization, another important function. But again, you can say that this function of socialization is also changing. We will come to that, but keep this idea in your mind. What about a couple? Both the members are working, both the husband and the wife are working, and they drop the child at the daycare and leave for work. Pick them up on the way back and repeat the same tomorrow. Where does this child spend most of the time? In the daycare. Where will he or she get socialized? In the daycare. So yes, this function of socialization is also changing. Then you have psychological function of giving love, affection, care to the family members. So these are various functions. And what you have to do is, right now we are going to take a break because a few of you are getting uneasy. And what you have to do is try to think about what can be the criticisms of these functions, what can be the problems related to these functions. Okay, so let's take a break now, and let's take a 10-minute break. That why do we need family? Then there can be various criticisms of the family, of these functions. Can you suggest what can be the criticisms of these functions? What can be the criticisms of these functions? Yes, so it can be gender inequality. It can be issues related to freedom of the individuals of the family. Yes, so gender inequality is portrayed in patriarchy. There can be problematic rituals related to family. Parents' quarrel leads to ill socialized children, and we will look at it in a different way. But yes, there can be issues with respect to socialization. Okay, so let's look at the criticisms of these functions one by one. Now, one thing is, inside the family, you can find that, think of a person uh, who is gay. Think of a person who is homosexual for that matter. Now, because of their gender identity, can it lead to trauma? Can it lead to traumatization of those people? That the family might not be ready to accept those individuals, and they might get traumatized. Similarly, you can see that this trauma can come from not letting the children, or not letting any member of the family for that matter, exercise freedom. So there can be restrictions on freedom as well. Your family might feel that it is, after your 12th standard, it is right time for you to earn, not letting you go for higher education, or maybe the circumstances not letting you go to higher education, which can lead to an impact on creativity. You want to become a doctor, but they want you to become an engineer. Similarly, with respect to socialization, what happens is that it is your family whose values you'll bear. Yes, you get socialized in other institutions like schools, your playgrounds, with your fellow students, by your teachers, everything happens. But there, the prominent socialization is that of family, that it is your family values, familial values, which will prevail. And you can see that as well. So your family might have told you to say respect your elders, which is a positive thing. But then there can be negative socialization as well. So someone had suggested, looking at domestic violence happening in your family, you would feel, or looking at the way women are treated in your family, you might feel that this is right. There is nothing wrong about it. So there can be problem with socialization. This lack of freedom can become a restriction to free development of your personality. Similarly, one argument against the institution of family is that it is based in patriarchy. Patriarchy means male members of the family exercising authority. So you would have seen in any traditional family, and leave traditional even today, it is generally the male members of the family who take any kind of significant decision. So yes, the household sphere is left to women to cater to, but generally it is the male members who will take major financial decisions of the family. Say we want to buy a land, and not making women a part of it. So patriarchy says that, according to patriarchy, it is male members of the family or male members of the society who exercise more authority compared to women. So this patriarchal setup of our Indian family system can be a problem. Then you find, because of patriarchy and because of this mindset, uh, the women of the family, the female members of the family, do not go out to work. They are limited to household sphere. They are the ones who will be involved in unpaid labor within the boundaries of home, within the boundaries of that family, which can be a problem. Then also you see that there is this transfer of property over the generations. Your grandfather would have passed it on to your father, and again everything is getting passed on the male side. Then the father will transfer that property to the son, so on and so forth. So the ones who believe in who do not believe in private property, the ones who believe in community ownership of the property, they say that family is nothing but a means to transfer this private property. And this argument generally is a Marxist argument that you need not know or remember, but this is another argument. Now, your domestic violence comes under the framework of patriarchy, that the male members are supposed to have more authority. They objectify women. They do not let them go out and work. They do not let them exercise any kind of freedom, which becomes a problem. So lack of development of personality means that, because of the limitations of your family might feel that one should get a white collar job, and you might feel that I want to become an artist, I want to become a sketch artist. And the family might think, no, you do not have a lot of careers in that field, and it is better you go for either medical or engineering. What would happen? That, one, your creativity is impacted. Another thing is that you are not able to develop your personality, because you would have done, or you would have fared well in the field of your choice, in the field of your interest, but because of the limitations of the family, you are restricted to something else, so which can become a problem. Then also you find, as a function, and you can club it with economic function, that it is the socio-economic status of the family which is transferred to the members. So generally, how do you identify yourself in the community? So if you go to a village, or if you live in the city, if someone asks you, who are you, or which family do you come from, and generally the question is, which family do you come from? and you will identify to your father's side generally. That means the socioeconomic status of your family is transferred to you. And with this transfer of socioeconomic status, you find that it restricts your mobility. Because of because of the social background of your family, you'll find that you'll be limited to certain activities or certain economic opportunities. You'll be limited in terms of your education. So this transfer of socioeconomic status, one, it can be good, but also it can work to your detriment. So yes, dependency of women on man, again part of patriarchy. So these can be various criticisms of the functions of the family. Why did we do it? So that we look into any kind of institution and we are able to criticize it. Now let's come to various types of family. Now these families can be classified in terms of their size, can also be classified in terms of the distribution of powers within the family, the composition of the family. Now let's take them up one by one. Now, one of the important feature of family was sharing a same residence or living under the same roof. Now, generally we find that in Indian society, it is the male, or it is the husband's parents' home where the wife will go and live. Because what happens after marriage? After the marriage, it is husband's parents' home where the wife goes, and which is basically a patriarchal setup of family. But then there are various tribes in a country wherein you'll find matrilocal setup. That means the husband will go and live at his in-laws, at his wife's residence. That is what? Matrilocal. But these are exceptions. The general trend that we find is that of a patrilocal setup. Patri can be related to father, and local is where you basically reside, where you will be put up. So patrilocal and matrilocal. But then there is a new trend. Think of modern world. People engaged in service sector. So after the marriage, what happens in cities is that after the marriage, maybe for a day or two or a week, you'll stay at your parents' place. But later on, you'll go and set up your residence in the city. Why? Because you work there. Because your primary economic activity happens there. So rather than staying at the husband's parents' home or the wife's parents' home, they go and set up a new residence somewhere else, which is what? Neo-local. So these neo-local families are new. They are not as new, but you see that the concept of neo-local families arrived with the advent of urbanization and industrialization. That it is generally because of industrialization and urbanization that people started moving out of their traditional homes. Then on the basis of authority, how the authority is distributed in the family. So the general trend is the male members of the family have more authority compared to the female members. It is generally the male members who will take all the kinds of decisions, all the significant decisions, be it related to your economic resources, be it related to how we have to conduct the family, be it related to education of the children, etc. And the families where you find that the authority lies in the male members is called a patriarchal family. Then there can be exceptions of where the authority lies in the women. That women exercise more authority, more control over everything compared to the male members. And you have exceptions of Nayars from Kerala, Khasis and Garos. And you'll find that these are a few tribes which you'll find everywhere mentioned as exceptions. Khasis, Garos. Yes, there can be other exceptions as well, because you might find that the girl is coming from an affluent family, the girl's family has a business, but the girl's family does not have a hire, because generally the hire comes from the male side. Generally it is the son to whom everything is transferred, property both movable and immovable. So think of a single girl child in her family. she doesn't have a brother, and they have, say, a family business. So at times you'll find that it is the husband who'll go and settle at the wife's parents' place and take care of their business and everything. So yes, there can be exceptions, but the general trend again is patrilocal, patriarchal. Then on the basis of lineage, if someone asks you normally that, okay, you're coming, uh, talk about your ancestors, who were your ancestors, you generally trace it on your father's side. You trace your lineage, your ancestry on your father's side. What is that? Patrilineal. Then there can be other ways where you'll find that you trace your lineage to your mother's side, and you might not be able to connect with matrilineal, matriarchal and matrilocal type of families if you have no exposure to those. So yes, it is limited in certain pockets, it is limited to a few tribes, and that's the reason we are not aware of these exceptions. So yes, there can be families where children trace their lineage to the mother's side, that this is my mother, mother's mother, mother's mother's mother, like that. What are those? Matrilineal families. Then on the basis of size, now on the basis of size, we have already looked at a question that has been asked in the past. So on the basis of size, you can think of nuclear families. So nuclear family is where there is a husband and a wife related by the bond of marriage, and there are children, unmarried children. If the children are unmarried, they'll be considered as nuclear. This is an example of nuclear family. So these children can be 2 or 3 or n number, but as long as they are not married, they'll be considered nuclear. So a nuclear family has husband, wife and unmarried children. Now any extension to this nuclear family, will make it a joint family or an extended family, and you can interchangeably use these terms, joint or extended. We do not have to say stick to the anthropological norms here. So these families can be, the other type of families can be considered both joint and extended. So think of husband, wife, their children. This is what a nuclear family. If this child gets married, say it is a son, gets married to a girl, now you find that this becomes a joint family. Also, you find that if there are more than 2 generations, so husband and wife, children and their children, what is this? Again, joint family. Now, so joint family says that there should be either more than 2 generations or more than one bond of marriage. So this one bond of marriage can be, there is this nuclear family 1, where you have a husband and a wife and unmarried children. Then this husband might have another brother who is also married, has his own nuclear family, husband, wife and children. So even in this even in this type of family, you will find there are more than more than one bond of marriage. So one bond of marriage in nuclear family 1 and one bond of marriage in nuclear family 2. So the basic rules are either there should be more than 2 generations or there should be more than one bond of marriage for a family to be called joint family. Now again, you do not have to stick to the exact norms, because you'll find that at times it can be the husband's unmarried sister who's living with them. It can be husband's divorced brother who's living with them, those will also be called joint families. So anything more than any if you add any member to this nuclear family, it will become a joint family, and you do not have to stick to any kind of definition, and no one's going to ask you any kind of definition. Now these are fairly simple with respect to authority, residence, etc. The particular cases related to size, and what we have to do is we have to look at various features of these two types on the basis of their size. On the basis of size of a family, it can be either nuclear or extended or joint family. Let's look at their features one by one. If you talk about nuclear families, you'll find them generally in your industrial and modern societies, because think of a traditional system. It was the primary economic activity was agriculture. The entire family used to cultivate the same land, used to stay together. Now with modern industries setting up, with urbanization, with better opportunities coming up in urban areas, in search of better opportunities, people started moving out of villages. So think of two brothers who were living there in a joint family, and one of the brother, along with his nuclear family, moves to a city or moves to an industrial area. What happens is that the joint family is broken. Then if you think about the relationship between the husband and wife, you'll find that in a joint family, these husband-wife relationships do not matter so much. It is mostly the bond of blood that matters more. That it is the bond between the siblings, it is the bond between the parents and the children which matters more compared to this bond of marriage. And if anyone has lived in a joint family or an extended family, they would know this, that the bond of marriage is not given due importance. There are multiple factors for that. One is patriarchal setup of our society, patriarchal mindset of our families, wherein the women is not considered at par with men. And that is one reason why you find that this bond is not as important as the bond of blood. And also it can be related to your property, transfer of your property, who generally the property will be passed on from father and equally distributed amongst sons. So those bonds become more important compared to this one. Another idea is, because of this patriarchal setup, it is the male members who are involved in economic security of the family, in taking care of the economic security of the family, and hence that bond becomes more important compared to the husband-wife bond. But here in modern societies, you'll find that this bond between husband and wife is given due importance. Why? Because it is a nuclear family. They both are more or less equal. The setup is more or less egalitarian, and egalitarian can be thought of in terms of equality, equal roles and responsibilities of both the members. That it will be husband who will contribute to household work, the wife will also contribute to say to paid labor. Then they have similar kind of authority, if not equal, but yes, more or less tending towards equality. And this bond becomes important between husband and wife. And also, if we look at the institution of marriage today, we find that it was the compatibility of the families in traditional setup which mattered. That the family are coming from the same caste, which is very obvious because it was endogamous practice. And then the families have more compatibility. Say they are business partners, or they are involved in agriculture. They have some sort of they have similar class for that matter. So the husband, generally you would find in traditional societies, in joint families, that the husband say was literate, was say in government services, and the wife would be someone who's not literate, who has not studied at all, who hasn't undergone through any kind of professional education. but their compatibility does not matter. What matters is compatibility of the families, the wealth of the families, the amount of land that they have, the number of cattle that they have, like their status in the society. So the compatibility of the families mattered more than compatibility between the partners. But now in modern families, you find that it is the individual compatibility, it is the compatibility between the husband and the wife which matters more. And you'll find that generally, say, a few of you might be looking for a match because you are, say, old enough, might be working, looking for a match, and you would see that you would want someone from the same similar educational background. And it does not matter that the families are compatible or not. One's family might be coming from agrarian background and the other one from service background, but their compatibility would not matter so much. It is the compatibility of the husband and the wife, of the to be husband and the wife, of the boy and the girl, that matters. Then if you talk about parent child relation, what we're saying is, in nuclear families, the primary attention, the primary focus is on the children, because it is husband, wife and children. So they stay in the limelight. And if you have grown up in a nuclear family, you could not have been mischievous. If you do something, then you are reprimanded for the same. But think about people like us who have been born and brought up in joint families. So we could have done anything and gotten away with it. Why? Because we are not the only focus of the family. We were brought up in the as part of the larger family, and it was not limited to that nuclear family of your parents and you. So the parent and child bond was not strong, because in joint families you'll find yourself more connected to your grandparents, more connected to your uncles and aunts, more connected to your cousins rather than your parents. So one is the the authority structure of the family. And because if you see in joint families, traditionally it was age was one of the factors of hierarchy. On the basis of age you will be treated. If you are the youngest one, then you do not have those kind of freedom, you do not have any say in any kind of family matters. But now you see that this parent child relationship is getting very strong. Then think about sibling bond. Sibling is basically bond between brother and brother, brother and sister, sister and sister. That is what sibling bond is. So if you look at sibling bond in traditional families, it was very important, and it is very important today as well, that a brother and a sister will stay together and they will respect each other for that matter. But when it comes to any kind of decision making, it will be the will of the elder one which will prevail. So the elder one will be engaged in discussion, and you'll be placed in a hierarchical manner on the basis of your age. Age was again an important factor. And if you see that even the leadership of the house, the role of the leader of the house, was transferred to the eldest male member of the family. Eldest male member of the family. So if your father is the eldest son in the family, he'll be the one who'll become the leader of the family once your grandfather, say, passes on the responsibility to him. And it is generally on the basis of age. But now if you see that, if you think of the bond between you and your sister, you and your brother, you'll find that it is more egalitarian. It is egalitarian in the sense that you have similar roles and responsibilities in the family. And also think about the idea of respect. You are being treated as equals, and you consider each other as equals. So if they say, if your sibling says that I'll go tell parents about your mischief, and you would say, please go ahead, I have a list of yours as well. So you would not back down even if you are younger to them. So there is a sense of egalitarianism with respect to this sibling bond. Then if we talk about division of labor, how the work is divided amongst the family members, you'll find that traditionally it was the male members who'll go out and work, who will contribute to the economic security, and it will be the female members of the family who will take care of the household work. So the male members are not going to enter the domain of household work, and the female members were not supposed to step outside the familial role of taking care of household responsibilities. But now you see in modern families, they contribute equally. So if they both are working, even irrespective of their work, and generally you find that in modern families, both of them will be working, husband and wife. So both of them are contributing to economic security, and also they share the household responsibilities as well. That I'll cook the food, you wash the utensils, for instance. Let's wash the clothes together on the weekend. Now you see that the division of labor has been diluted. It is not as segregated, or it is not as specialized as it was before. So now both the members of the family have joint roles. Then we talk about authority distribution. Male members used to exercise usually in your traditional families, but now you find that again there is egalitarianism here. They have a joint authority, they take decisions together, they consult each other when any decision has to be made. And also at times you'll find that if the female or the wife is stronger or more dominant, you'll find they are the ones who will exercise authority. So yes, it can be a complete shift from a patriarchal setup. You can find more authority, more powers vested in the female members. Then how about the relationship between the individual and the collective? In traditional Indian society, we were saying that in joint families, and we have looked at it as a criticism, that you have to often given to the interest of the family at large. So you might be thinking of going abroad for your education, but because there has to be a marriage, or the family has to purchase a land, family has to invest in something, you would have to give up on your dream of going abroad and studying. So you'll find that you would have to compromise. The interest of the individual will be subordinated to the collective, and it does not just apply to you, it applies to your parents as well. So for the interest of the whole family, they would not take up their personal interests. But now you see that if you want something, they'll try to reach an agreement. If you go and ask your father right now, your father and mother might be sitting in the drawing room right now, and you go and ask them that I want a super expensive phone, say worth 1 lakh rupees. So traditionally what would have happened is they would have chased you away. So they would have asked you to leave right away, or lose maybe a couple of your teeth. But now what will happen is they'll say that, okay, you need it. Right now we do not have the resources. Let's do one thing. Let's buy you a little cheaper one, say 50 grand, and maybe later in a year or so, when we have enough resources, we'll buy you another one. We'll buy you the one that you want right now. So there'll be an attempt to reconcile. The individual does not have to give in to the collective. And also now you'll find more and more as we move towards modernization, at times the collective has to give in to the individual. That if you go on saying that if you're not getting me this cell phone, if you're not getting me a scooter or a bike, I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to say good morning, good night, hello. I would not speak to you for days. I would not eat for days. Traditionally, what would have happened is they would have said, okay, go ahead, be our guest. Let's see how long you cannot eat. But now you find that the parents become more and more anxious, and they would say that, okay, fine, we'll take care of other responsibilities later. Let's go to the market, get a new phone, cell phone for you. So yes, at times you'll find that the collective will end up giving in to the individual. Then you talk about the gender relationship, and it can be related to division of labor to that extent. So you find that the men and women have equal kinds of responsibilities, equal roles, equal rights in the family, as compared to traditional families where women were subordinated, where women were not treated at par with men. They were considered inferior. They had no rights for that matter. So these can be a few differences between nuclear and joint family. And now you see that when we were discussing nuclear and joint families, we were giving reference to modern and traditional society. So one thing is clear, that if you look at joint family, it is primarily based in traditional families, traditional society, that to agriculture, agrarian societies. And if you look at nuclear families, it is more of a modern phenomena. But is it that you do not see any joint families at all today? And the answer would be no. You would say that we find a lot of joint families if you go to the rural areas. And we do find joint families in urban areas as well. Think of a small business that a family might be running. The chances are they must be staying together. If both the brothers are involved in the same business, the chances are they would be living in a joint family. But again, there are changes with respect to that. You find that joint family, one of the feature of joint family is dining together, that all the members will dine together in a joint family. But you might find now that within the same household, there are two brothers and there are two separate kitchens. They're living under the same roof. They are also pooling the same resources, or they are also contributing to the same resources, same pool, but they might be conducting their personal business separately. They might be having separate kitchens. Similarly, there can be a joint family within which there are multiple nuclear families. So both the brothers, or say 2 3 brothers, everyone is involved in a different activity. One is a civil servant, the other one is involved in agriculture, and then there can be a third one who has a small business. So they are living together under the same roof, but they might not be sharing their economic resources. So yes, there can be various forms, and we do not have to limit it to a particular definition. Yes, we should have a general idea how a joint family looks like. So this is the idea about extended and nuclear family. Let's do one thing first. Let's come back to the question. Let's come back to the previous year question that we had seen. Now the question says the life cycle of a joint family depends on economic factors rather than social values. So the first idea is, what is this life cycle of a joint family? And what can be various economic and social factors that this joint family depends on? Just think about it. We will come to the structure of the answer, but just think about these two ideas. What are the economic factors which contribute to the life cycle of a joint family? And what can be the various social factors or social values which do the same? So one idea is, when you talk about any kind of joint cycle, any kind of life cycle, you would see that the life cycle can go on continuing or it can break down. The life cycle can go on continuing and or it can break down. So a joint family can remain together or it can split up in various nuclear families. So what we have to do is, we have to look at this joint family. We have to look at this joint family in two ways. One is that what can make it continue, and the other idea is what can break this life cycle down. And then we will try to segregate the economic and social factors. The first thing that has to be understood is life cycle of a joint family. Okay, so let's see what you are suggesting. Okay, so rather than writing about the economic and social factor, let's follow the process so that others also feel as a part of discussion. So what can be the factors which can make this life cycle continue, and what can be the factors which can lead to a breakdown? So yes, urbanization can be a factor. Okay, we will classify later, do not worry. Then emotional discontent, issues related to authority, then it can be various legal provisions. Great. Migration can be other reason. Love and affection can be another reason for this life cycle to continue. Property dispute can be something which can break it down. Great. Finding better economic opportunities elsewhere can break this down. Great. Okay. So you are pretty much thinking on the same line. But what we have to understand is that it is with contribution of a lot of you that we are achieving this answer. We are near a perfect answer. But what you have to understand is not everyone has all those pointers in mind. There can be a few who understand the entire structure, but mostly it is little contributions from everyone which lead to a perfect answer. And what we have to do is we have to empower everyone so that everyone can think how to go about this. So let's look at this question, that the life cycle of a joint family depends on economic factors rather than social values. So one idea is clear, that the majority of focus has to go to the body, has to talk about how economic factors affect the life cycle. But within this, the first question is what can be the various economic factors. Think about property, think about better economic opportunities, which will lead to migration for that matter. Just think about this. Now think about land or any kind of property that is generally shared amongst the brothers in a family. It is passed on from one generation to another, and it is generally shared equally amongst the brothers. Even though you see that your law says that even the daughters, the widows, have an equal right to property, but we do not see that materializing. We see that it is generally the male members or the brothers amongst which the property is divided. So there can be a property dispute, because of which the joint cycle, the life cycle can break down. They were staying together, but because of a dispute about property, that one brother says that I want this land and you take the shop, and the other brother says no, if you want to keep the land, I need the shop and the house. So there can be a property dispute which can lead to breakdown. Then similarly, everyone is engaged in agriculture, but the younger brother is slightly more skilled compared to the elder brother, and they see that uh, in the nearby city, in the nearby district, they have a new industry that is being set up, and for the sake of better economic opportunities, the brother might leave and break the joint family. Now also, just think about a factor which can make this life cycle continue. So this life cycle broke down, that one brother along with his nuclear family has moved to a city, has moved to an industrial area in search of a job, thereby breaking down this joint family. What can be a factor that can lead to continuity in this life cycle? Think about it. No, values will come to values. We are right now talking about economic factors. Values is easy because you have a sibling bond, you have a bond of blood, and also there are various social constraints that everyone feels for the society, everyone follows the norms of the society, and you find that there is a lot of stigma attached to breaking down of any kind of joint family. So people would say that, why did you break up? Why did you break up? For the matter of money, for the matter of property. So to maintain that social image, people might not say go away. Yes, so one idea is engaged in a business together. They have a family business which makes sure that they stay together. Great. Common source of livelihood. So it can be either business, it can be agriculture, which can keep them together. Great. Okay. Think of other examples as well. So one idea is, when you talk about the life cycle, it is not only about breaking down or breaking that life cycle down, but it is also about the continuity in the life cycle. Because generally what happens is this aspect goes missing from your answer. This aspect goes missing from your answer, that you do not generally think about how to look at the continuity that is maintained in this joint family. Also think about your layoffs. So one brother had left to the city for better economic opportunity, but unfortunately he was laid off from the job. What option does he have? The option is, they'll go back to the family, they'll take up agriculture, or they'll become a part of the business of they'll become part of the family business again, right? So when you look at this life cycle, you have to look at it from both the angles. One is how it can break down, and the other one is how it can maintain continuity. So please do remember this part. That is why we are emphasizing on structure. Now these were economic factors which constitute your body part. Now another dimension is that it is also social values that impact the life cycle of a joint family. Now think about various social values. So one is that your bond of love, affection, care for your family can keep you together. That is one. Second is change in these values, change in these values with modernization can lead to breakdown of the family. Yes, so generally we find that obedience to the elder ones is another feature of a joint family. What if the values change? The younger one thinks that I'm not going to obey what you say, which can lead to a breakdown. So change in these values like love, etc. So when you look at social values, what you have to do is you have to give it slightly less weightage, or a lot less weightage compared to economic factors, because the question has asked you so. The question is saying that life cycle of a joint family depends on economic factors rather than social values. So what you say is, yes, it is economic factors which affect the life cycle of a joint family, and you show them how in the body part. In the introduction, you can talk briefly about various social values, or rather how social values also impact the life cycle of joint families. So I hope this sounds like a good introduction, wherein you give them one perspective. That is one part of the question. So the intro has to be brief, and you tell them briefly that various values like obedience, love, and affection for your family members can keep the joint family intact, and also a change in these values because of various factors, because of modernization, because of increasing levels of education. Because people might think that now that I'm educated, why would I listen to my brother, who is though elder to me but is not as well educated as me, which can lead to a breakdown in a joint family. So you give this introduction briefly, Then you talk about the body part, wherein you have to write about how economic factors make changes to this life cycle of joint family. This is also done. Now think about a possible conclusion for this question. What can be a possible conclusion? Think about it. In conclusion, social as well as economic factors can be described as important for joint family. Now see that we have already dealt with social and economic factors. We have already dealt with social and economic factors. Think of something else. Press yourself a bit and think of something else. Just think about it. Yes, you are right in saying that we can mention other factors. Can someone suggest a political factor which can affect the life cycle of a joint family? Can someone suggest a political factor which can affect the life cycle of a joint family? What kind of political factor can be there? Think about it. Yes, definitely. So Pushpendra is saying that in the economic factor, can't we add the incapability of one brother in terms of economic strength? And we are coming to it. We will critically analyze your joint family and we will come to it. Because what happens is that the economic security that is there, that is inherent in a joint family, can lead to complacency in one of them. And we'll come to it. We'll try to critically analyze the joint family. So one idea is difference in political ideologies. That is good. That is, yes, something interesting. What can be the other factors? Okay, just think about your political decisions, like think about your land reforms, think about land sealing, think about land sealing. Think about land sealing, wherein you find that there was a ceiling put on the land, the amount of land one can occupy, one can possess. And with that, you see that what happened was the ones who had a lot of land, they transferred it in name of the children so that it is divided. Because say if there is a there is the father has, say, 100 acres of land, say for instance. Now this 100 acres of land will be lost in land sealing. Say he divides it amongst the children, 25 acres each, for instance. Now with this uh, partition, with this division of property, they might feel that, okay, now that we have property in our names, why not lead our own way? Because one of the brother might feel that I'll just sell off this land and leave uh, for the city. I'll go find some work there or set up a small business there. So this can lead to a breakdown. This can lead to a breakdown of the joint family, which happened for a political reason. And also say, because of this, you find that because of, say, partition, over the years, the size of the land will go on getting smaller. The size of the land will go on getting smaller. So think about a situation where the father, and it can be added to economic factors. Think about a situation where the father transferred the property equally in the name of the children. They got separated. They said that, okay, now we have our own land. I'll go my own way and he'll go his own way. But they found out after a month or so, or 6 months, they found out that the small or the fragment of land that we have is not very productive. And the only way out is, only way to make it productive or make some money out of it or take some surplus out of it would be to club it together and start cultivating it together again. That might lead to, say, the life cycle that broke down previously will get continued again. Right? So there can be various factors which can impact the life cycle of a joint family. What did we do? We address the major part of the question in the body, which says that it is the economic factors on which joint families life cycle depends. Then in the introduction we talked about how social values also affect the life cycle of a joint family, but this has to be very brief. It has to be very brief. You do not have to explain the pointers. Then you move on to the conclusion part, wherein you can mention other factors. There can be environmental factors as well. But again, you remember, it is a 10 marker, 150 words. So the major part goes here, and you have to conclude your introduction and conclusion in not more than 20, 25 words, so that you can give due focus or due attention to this part of the answer. So I hope you are able to understand this question, that how we have to structure it. What we did apart from the basic structure, we looked at the life cycle of a joint family, how the life cycle can break down or how this life cycle can continue. Okay, so with this question, let's move ahead and talk about various changes that are happening in the family. So with this, you can see that how this, with respect to the size and the internal composition of the family, things are changing. Then we have given you a few examples of different types of families that are coming up, which are changing because of various factors. So for example, live-in relationship, for example, people living together, sharing the same roof. For example, think of yourself and your flatmate. Now you stay there together as a family. You share the economic resources, you share the rent, you share the expense on food. You are living under the same roof. We are also having the food together, right? You also take care of each other's emotional needs. So that is also a new form of family. Now what we have to do is, let's look at various factors which lead to various changes in this institution of family. Because again, a question can be directed towards what are the various factors. See, Amish, we can definitely justify the statement, and a better conclusion would be, in that question, a better conclusion would be to bring about a balance, that it is not always economic factors, but yes, there can be social values which affect the joint, the life cycle of a joint family as well. Yes, so I hope the idea is clear. You try writing this answer as well, and let's see how well you score. And please, when I say that you write answers, please try to write at least one answer on a regular basis, so that by the time we finish our lectures, you have written at least 13 answers plus 10 to 15 weekly test answers. They'll come, the total will come up to 30 answers, and 30 to 35 answers would be a good number if you are able to write in this duration. And you can see the improvement. You would see that how you'll be in a better position to conceptualize the questions. Okay, let's talk about various factors which are bringing about these changes. So we have actually already looked at these changes. Think about industrialization, setting up of industries, breaking down of joint family, converting it to a nuclear family. Similarly, people moving to urban areas for various reasons, like access to proper education, better education, access to better healthcare, access to better economic opportunities, for a better standard of living. People might move to urban areas. So urbanization can contribute to these changes. And also, it is not just the migration that is happening, it is not just the breaking up of a joint family that is happening. It is also, these factors are also bringing about changes in the internal structure. So it is happening on two levels. One is on the size level, nuclear to joint, joint to nuclear, and then also on the composition or internal structure of the family. That with urbanization, with increased exposure, with increased level of awareness, you find that the internal composition is changing. Now the wife is also asserting her rights. Now the wife is also going out to work. So you do not have to think about these factors only in terms of breaking up of a joint family. They are also bringing about changes in the internal composition. So I hope this idea is clear. You keep this thing in mind, that whenever you look at changes, you look at various features, right? So how various features are changing, and that is what we have done. So that's why we broke down your joint and nuclear families in various aspects. What are all the dimensions? And now you see that there is just one thing related to size that we generally primarily focus on, and there are n number of aspects which are generally missed out. So please do not do that. When you look at change, think both in terms of size and composition of the family. Then your Western culture can change the internal structure. Because of your Western culture, say in Western culture, children generally move out by the time they are 18, breaking up of a family. Then also, because of Western culture, egalitarian structure, because generally in Western culture you'll find they have pretty much equal rights. But what about the values? The value system might also change. Because of the Western influence, you might not obey your elders. Similarly, if you talk about modern education, you find that the idea of socialization, because your family used to socialize you in various aspects. Now this primary function of socialization is changed. The primary function of socialization now is taken up by your various specialized institutions, like your schools, like your daycares. So size, composition, functions. Right. So I'm doing it in stepwise manner so that you remember, you do not have to miss out on any aspect. Yes. So for example, divorce is very common in Western culture, whereas in Indian culture, generally, traditionally, marriage was a bond which could not have been broken. Marriage was a sacred bond, whereas in Western culture, marriage is contractual. So the shift in that idea. Then there can be various legislative measures. For example, we have already discussed land reforms. Another measure, can you possibly think of any other measure which has brought about changes in family? So we looked at land reforms from the perspective of breaking up of a joint family. Yes, so inheritance right to women, great, right to property for women. Now then they also have an equal right with respect to sharing the property of their parents. Great. Yes, then again, lovely. So the idea of right to choose your partner, right to privacy. So these can be a few legislative measures or ideas related to how politics or how various policies can impact your institution of family. Yes, so the idea of adoptions, promotion of women's education, Hindu family law which has been amended, great. Now what we did was we looked into various changes, various factors which can bring about changes in the family structure. Now think about this. We have already looked at changes in size and composition, right? So we have already looked into changes in size and composition, comparing the joint and nuclear family. So I hope we do not have to repeat it again. We need not repeat it again. Now, other idea is how the functions of the family are changing. The family had various functions. The family had economic function. The family had biological function. The family had function related to socialization. How these functions are changing. But before coming to the, okay, let's do the functions first, and then we'll come to the later part. Let's talk about the functions again. Modern education can change your value system. Modern education will lead to empowerment of women. Modern education will basically become the primary source of socialization of children. That's how modern education is a factor. Let's look at each and every function and how things have changed. If you talk about the idea of economic cooperation, because one function is they cooperate with respect to economy, with respect to resources, that they distribute those resources equitably amongst the family. So whatever resources are there within a family, everyone has an equal right over those resources. So if we talk about your agrarian and pre-industrial society, family was a unit of production. That means it was the family which was involved in agriculture, and ultimately the basic unit of production, because they might not use that produce to sell as a surplus in the market. They might be using it only for consumption. So one is they are unit of production, and everyone is cooperating in production. And again, there are uh, differences with respect to that. In say in so-called upper caste, you'll find that generally they were better off, and the female members of the family would not involve in agriculture, would not get involved in agriculture. Whereas if you come from a poorer household, it will be everyone inside the family, be it children, be it women, who will get involved in agriculture. So but generally you find that family was the unit of production, and they cooperated with each other for this production. But now in modern society, most of the not most of the people, because majority of our population is still involved in agriculture, but a lot of people take up jobs either in industries, either in service sectors. So they are no more a unit of production. What they do is they go earn some money, have some income, pool it on the, say, scale of family. Everyone who is going to contribute in this pool, then they will work as a unit of consumption. That they'll use money out of this pool, they'll use resources out of this pool to consume. So a shift from unit of production to unit of consumption. And even in agrarian setup, it was more often than not, you'll find that a family who is involved in production was using the entire produce for consumption only. They did not have a lot of surplus at times. Then another function of the family was socialization. So socialization also includes education. Socialization also includes your culture, your religion. So think of them as one. So previously in agrarian setup, did you need any specialized skills or any kind of professional education to take up agriculture? Absolutely no. So the children would not be provided any formal education. Only thing that will pass on from parents will be the basic skill set that you need to get involved in agriculture. And it was not only agriculture, then there were your handicraft artists for that matter. So they'll be imparted only the skills that are required for that occupation to take up that work. In modern society, you see, if you talk about the enrollment ratio in a country, it is more than 98%. So 98% of the students, of the children, are going for formal education, at least at the initial stage. They might not take it up till higher education, they might not make it to higher education, but yes, at least they are initiated in formal education. And you find that till industrial society, family was the primary form of socialization. But if you move towards post-industrial society, things are changing again. Post-industrial society is the one involved in service sector. The basic difference is industrial society has more of industries. People are more and more people are involved in industries, are working in industries. In post-industrial society, the entire push is towards services. So pre-industrial is agrarian, industrial has gives significance to industries, and then you have post-industrial where there is a push towards service sector. And the basic difference is you find that between industrial and post-industrial is, apart from the economic activity, is you find that things are getting more, the process of development is going further. For example, in industrial society, yes, women started asserting their rights, but it is towards post-industrial society that you find that they are gaining a lot of ground. Similarly, if you talk about empowerment of various sections of our society, of various weaker sections, yes, it started during the industrial times, but now you find that they are also, the level of empowerment is increasing. So yes, there'll be changes, slight changes. So think about industrial setup where generally women would not go out to work. Yes, there were a few women who would get involved in work, but generally in post-industrial society, you'll find that women are also involved in work, some kind of paid labor. Because one thing is that your cost of living is higher in post-industrial society compared to industrial society and pre-industrial society. So if you're living in a city engaged in service sector, you think how the rent goes. You think about how expensive the fruits, vegetables, and everything is. So everyone in the family has becomes a responsibility to take up some kind of paid labor, and at least the husband and the wife. So in industrial society, at least the wife was at home taking care of the children, socializing the children. But in service sector, none of them are at home. Both are going to the respective workplaces, and the children ultimately get socialized where, in your various specialized institutions. So there is a change when you move from pre-industrial to post-industrial society. Then if you talk about security, social security, think of a person within the joint family who is disabled, and that person cannot possibly contribute to any kind of say economic or paid labor. They might not even be able to take care of themselves, but the entire family will take care of them. The entire family will take care of the elderly, the entire family will take care of the ill, the entire family will take care of the ones who are not able to say get work, get any kind of gainful employment. But in this industrial and post industrial society, you find the role of welfare state, wherein the state, in the form of various types of pensions, takes care of the social security of these people, in the form of pension, in the form of old age homes for the elderly, etc. The state is now responsible for taking care of the social security needs of the people. Previously, it was the family. And even if you see that uh, till today, you'll find that it is not just family, but the entire community, particularly in rural areas, that generally takes care of the individuals. Because there might be families where the entire family has moved out, say, because you'll find a lot of examples like that. We have one in our neighborhood. So the entire family has moved out, and the only one of the brother is left behind. He was working previously, but because of paralysis, he is not able to work anymore. Now the family can only take care of the economic needs. The person who's living here, who got paralyzed, is not ready to move out of this home. So all that their family members can do is take care of their financial needs, because they cannot leave their entire family, their children behind, and come settle here, because they also have responsibility towards their nuclear family. So what they do is they help him economically, but it is the community, it is the people in general who take care of that person. So yes, it is not, the responsibility has not been shifted entirely to the welfare state, but it is increasingly moving in that direction. If you talk about social safety, So families have their, and till today families have their own self defense mechanisms. So generally you'll find it very strong in rural areas, that they take care of their safety needs. They'll be there, they'll stand for the entire family if there is any problem. And now, while moving towards industrial and post industrial society, it is generally the state which takes care of social safety as well, with their law and order enforcement agencies, your police. So they are the ones who will take care of your safety needs. Now you need not train your children, because being brought up in a joint family, you would know that they teach you, say, basics of any kind of uh, combat, physical combat, so that you're prepared in case of any kind of safety security threat to your family. You are prepared for that matter. But now it has been, the responsibility has been shifted towards the state. Now if we talk about recreation and you're basically passing on of cultural traits, you'll find that in joint families and traditional families, it was your grandparents, it was your uncles and aunts who will tell you stories, who will tell you poems, who will teach basic things about culture, right? Who will say, tell you a verse from any of the spiritual or religious text. And it was the primary form of entertainment. You did not have, you did not had these TVs or cell phones, etc. back then. So it was the family who used to take care of your entertainment needs. They'll entertain you. With that entertainment, they'll try to pass on a few moral lessons, a few basic values that need to be upheld. But now, in the modern times, you find that it is your mass media that plays this role. It is your mass media with which you take care of your entertainment needs. It is your mass media which has become, again, an important form of your important factor of your socialization, because your opinions and everything is shaped by mass media. The things that you like, the values that you care about, everything is shaped by mass media now. And you find that various cultural traits and stories and things that were passed on through your family members is not happening anymore. People do not even know the basics of their culture, the basics of their region. Then about religion, with the passing on of this culture, religion was also an essential part. So religion was the basis of your socialization. So any kind of moral value will be accompanied by a story out of your religious text, will accompany out of some epic. And that's how you were socialized, both in religion and culture. And that's, and you'll see that the elder ones here would see that most of your arguments in favor or against of some kind of ethical moral issue are generally based in religion. But now you find that religion has become your private affair. Parents do not have time to take care of the children. The children get socialized in schools and various institutions. Now schools have a scientific way of approaching education. Yes, you get socialized there, but your religion remains your private affair. They would not let religion enter education. Yes, at times you have institutions where religion plays an important role in education, but yes, more often than not, you'll find that their education has a strict line of separation with respect to religion, and it has now become your private affair. And along with that, you see, previously it was the larger religion that people used to follow. Now a lot of sects and cults have emerged, and people, children, and various family members become a part of those cults. So within a family, the father might not believe in, say, any religion for that matter, but the mother might be inclined towards a particular sect, right? So now things have changed. Religion has become your private affair, and increasingly you'll find that the newer generations do not have any inclination towards religion for that matter. But also, the problem is we find a lot of violence happening in our society on the basis of religion. So how is it that we say secularization of the society is happening, wherein religion is losing its importance? That's what we read in modernity. and various aspects of modernization, but at the same time you find an emergence of a rise of various violent communal conflicts. Now this is a question for you to think about, and yes, it will be discussed somewhere uh, as we move along the lines of our syllabus. But you keep this question in mind, that how can secularization and communalism go hand in hand? So with this, let's conclude the discussion for today, because it's already time. And what we'll do is we'll continue our discussion tomorrow from where we are leaving. I expect you to write these two questions. One was on caste system, and the other one was on life cycle of joint family. So we have discussed everything in detail. We have finalized the entire structure, in what manner you have to proceed. All you have to do is use your own words, use your own language to write those answers, and structure would not be a problem. And we'll make sure by the time we finish our classes, you will be able to conceptualize the structure even better. So thank you everyone, and good night.